What's on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering, and well, I know you all love it. I know you love a good get woke, go broke story. And so let's start with the collapse of Starbucks, and as it has been colossal. Billions and billions and billions of dollars erased off its market cap in just minutes. The collapse has been absolutely insane. So let's start with this. The Kobayashi letter, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, and probably not because I'm terrible at that. The collapse of Starbucks is insane. Starbucks CEO went on to live TV attempting to revive the stock. He says, quote, "It was a very tough quarter due to pressures on customers, inflation, China, why, and challenges of the business in the Middle East, huh? And also impacting us in other geographies. The worst part, when he was asked why they didn't pre-announce such a horrible quarter, he said, 'We were working on action plans.' As he was talking throughout the 10-minute interview, the stock went down another 5% in real time. Starbucks stock closes the day 16% lower and has erased $35 billion in market value since an all-time high. How did Starbucks collapse so quickly? Well, I think a big part of it is obviously people have decided to go to coffee.com and use promo code The Quartering to either check out our amazing Roaster's Choice program, which is still 50% off for the very first month. It's a different blend from around the world each month, better than any bean you're going to get from Starbucks, or some of our many flavors, unflavored coffee, our double calf, our cocos, everything you can see. We've got all new packaging. Everything looks nice and new and fancy. Promo code The Quartering. Coffee brand, coffee, screw Starbucks. Anyway, this is one of the worst CEO interviews we've ever seen. Even through the tone of his voice, investors lost further confidence in the stock. Investors are eager to see the, quote, action plan they have in place. Yes, right. You mean overpriced unnecessary goods in an inflationary market with a customer base who are having to cut back is cause for concern? Who would have guessed? That's the overarching reality, right? I don't know what it costs to get a Starbucks. I imagine just a cup of coffee from there isn't very expensive, although I don't know. But that's not what most people buy. Most people are buying like the Mocha Joca Bull Spit stuff. That's like $7, $8, $9 for a single coffee drink, waiting 20 minutes in line for it around a bunch of other smelly liberals. Like, that's not it. And by the way, plenty of conservatives are enjoying their Starbucks, by the way. Anyway, you see the number of reasons people have mentioned for the decline of Starbucks is wild. Everyone has a reason they don't go there anymore. After watching the interview with Starbucks CEO, I was disappointed in the new management. The CEO doesn't even have the long-term orientation and seems to give vague non-answers. There's no plan whatsoever. There's people here saying, I used to go to Starbucks daily. Recently, they added tips to the checkout line. I feel guilty not adding $1 as I'm already being stared down by the cashier, and no tip is the default option. Guilting me into tipping on top of expensive coffee is ridiculous. I stopped going. And that's another huge factor. I just went, you all know that I went down to Steven Crowder's show. By the way, if you're watching and you aren't currently subscribed or following, please do click that button down below. I know you might have to create an account, but it helps immensely. I recently traveled to Texas to be on Louder with Crowder. Everybody wanted a tip, including kiosks in the airport with no employees. It's insane. And I have always been a tip guy. I've always enjoyed tipping my I've always been a generous guy when it comes to adding extra money onto my bills if I feel the service has exceeded. But this whole, I get it. I get that other countries don't have this. In America, your servers, diners are forced to subsidize companies paying their servers less than minimum wage. So you get guilted into tipping them. Now I wanted to buy a single bag of Cheez-Its. I can't remember, Cheese Nips or Its. It was Its. Cheese Its pepper jack and a bottle of water for my flight, and they asked me for a 15%. It defaulted to a 15% tip. And I was like, you're charging me $7.50 for a bag of cheese nips? No tip for you. And by the way, no employee to tip. This seems to be increasingly popular. You see a lot of people, ultimately inflation, tip culture. This interview gives me Big Short vibes. All this stuff. And if you look at the Starbucks stock, I mean, this is the day of the interview on April 30th. It went from $88 down to $74, lost $14. It's down 15% in the last month. If you look at the last, 5 or last 1 year, it's down 31%, hitting a nearly all-time low. And there's a lot of reasons for it. First of all, overpriced, greedy. And by the way, the baristas that work there, outside of the ones that perhaps make TikTok videos about, being mad that people don't tip them, it's not their fault. It's not their fault. Like, if you just work at Starbucks and people are pissed that they're getting forced to tip, like, it's on the kiosk, it's on the credit card machine. And by the way, I don't tip for a $9 coffee drink. Again, I consider myself relatively generous when I order DoorDash, which is rare these days now. Like a lot of people, I make sure I make it worth their while. If I'm gonna order, I try to tip well. If I'm not in a position to tip well, then I don't order out. It's like when I was young. Remember when you were young? I mean, some of you are, but for me, I don't know if you all did this. I suspect many of you did. It was called pre-drinking. Like you wanted to go to the bar on a Thursday, Friday night, and you had $18 on you. So you went to the store and you bought a 12-pack of Milwaukee's Best Ice. You and your buddy each drank 6 of them. You were hammered beyond belief. And then maybe you left 2 back in stashed somewhere. I'm not going to say the car. And then you left the bar to have a smoke, and then you went and chugged a beer, and then you had enough money to buy like 2 or 3 drinks in the bar and leave a tip. Like, that's what that's what people do when they don't have the money and they still want to go out. The idea that I would have to tip on top of everything is insanity. You see, Starbucks has had a disastrous start of the year with tens of millions of customers heading instead to rivals or staying home. Tim Hortons, McDonald's, and Dunkin' Donuts have all taken market share from Starbucks across hot and cold drinks. Well, that's because, when you're at McDonald's, you don't feel like you have to tip. Now, I can't speak to the quality of their product. I've never had a McDonald's coffee drink. But I know that when I worked in the office, the chicks in the office would always get that instead of Starbucks because it was cheaper. And they would come in with like these giant iced mochas that were like 1,000 calories. And then they would whine and complain why they were gaining weight. But that's neither here nor there. The company reported a fall in sales this week for the first time in nearly 3 years, which was at the height of the lockdowns. It was only in November that it reported takings. Multiple factors are to blame: high prices, customers cutting spending, and bad weather. But slow service was also highlighted. So they want you to tip. The baristas want you to tip, but they're slow AF. Part of that is these drinks that take 15 steps to make. Part of that is that you can't blame. Part of that is that you're not buying from coffeebrandcoffee.com, promo code The Quartering, and making your own delicious iced coffee at home. I recommend our blueberries and cream or strawberries and cream for an iced coffee. Make it double strong. Put it on ice. Enjoy. It will cost you about $1 to do that instead of $9 from Starbucks. Anyway, Starbucks growth has come on the back. What's happening? Of complicated, customizable drinks like frappuccinos in the summer or pumpkin spice lattes in the fall. Pumpkin spice lattes are not complicated to make. It's just a flavor. But each take baristas several minutes to make. Well, then hire more baristas. I mean, it's pretty simple. Put more machines on them. If you can't keep up with capacity, I used to run a call center. We had about 100 agents on the phone at any given time, and we would always be dropping calls. But there was an acceptable amount of wait time that people would take. And at some point, it's like, it makes sense to bring on more staff or buy a bigger building or sell those calls to a different call center, monetize them in some way, shape, or form, rather than just let people leave. Of course, Starbucks has about 17,000 stores in the United States, also warned investors on Tuesday it will continue to see slow sales in spring and summer. Boycotts by pro-Palestinian supporters over Starbucks' perceived support of Israel military action in Gaza has also hit sales, particularly on college campuses. Slow service, the company said each day it sees millions of examples of customers ordering items and then simply abandoning their drinks because it took too long. Millions? And by the way, that means you paid for it. You pay for your drink when you order it. So they're paying for the drink and only got so much time to wait around. So they leave. So Starbucks gets that money for nothing and they throw their drink away. Imagine that. I mean, maybe don't take, you see Starbucks line has been ridiculous lately. Starbucks needs to get a line for people just getting black coffee. Yeah, I mean, people who just want to get a single coffee with like a little bit of creamer, they got to wait 30 minutes. Plus, you want to worry about the environment. How about 100 cars sitting idling in a drive-thru all day long? I mean, I absolutely love to see it. Tens of millions of customers. What did I say? $30 billion in market share. You absolutely love to see it. Buy coffee brand coffee instead. Screw Starbucks and their woke trash and their $9 sugar drinks that you shouldn't be drinking anyway. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave a like on it. We'll talk to you again real soon.